On September 6th, 2007, something happened in the Syrian desert that wasn't supposed to be possible. A heavily guarded facility disappeared overnight. No warning, no declaration of war, no invasion. Just a series of explosions in the darkness. And by sunrise, one of the most secretive construction projects in the Middle East was gone. The strangest part? Almost nobody talked about it. Not Syria, not Israel, not even the countries that knew exactly what had happened. For years, the operation remained hidden behind secrecy, rumors, and unanswered questions. But the truth behind that night would reveal one of the most daring military missions of the modern era. A mission built on intelligence, deception, and a race against time. A mission known as Operation Orchard. And it all started with a building that wasn't supposed to exist. The structure stood alone in the desert near the Euphrates River. There were no nearby cities, no industrial zones, no obvious reason for anyone to build something so large in such a remote location. At first glance, satellite imagery showed nothing remarkable. A rectangular building, construction activity, security fencing, the sort of thing intelligence agencies see thousands of times every year. But something about it kept drawing attention. Analysts continued returning to the images, looking, comparing, studying every detail. Because the deeper they looked, the less sense the facility made. Why build such a large structure in the middle of nowhere? Why surround it with unusual security? Why keep the entire project hidden from international inspectors? And perhaps, most importantly, why did it look so familiar? Thousands of miles away, another building existed with strikingly similar characteristics. A building associated with North Korea. And that realization changed everything. At first, the idea sounded unbelievable. Syria wasn't known for operating nuclear reactors. The location seemed impractical. The evidence was incomplete, but the similarities continued to grow. Each new image raised more questions than answers. The walls, the dimensions, the layout. Individually, none of it proved anything. Together, it painted a troubling picture. If intelligence assessments were correct, Syria wasn't building a warehouse. It wasn't building a military headquarters. And it wasn't constructing a factory. It might have been building a nuclear reactor. For Israeli leaders, that possibility wasn't simply concerning. It was unacceptable. History had already shaped their thinking. Decades earlier, Israel had launched a surprise strike against Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor. Many believed that operation prevented a future threat. Now another potential reactor appeared to be rising in the Syrian desert. And once again, leaders faced a difficult question. Do you wait or do you act? Waiting carried risks. If the reactor became operational, destroying it later could become far more dangerous. The political consequences would grow. The military challenges would increase. And if the assessments were correct, every month that passed allowed the project to move closer to completion. But acting carried risks too. What if the intelligence was wrong? What if the facility wasn't a reactor at all? Launching a military strike based on faulty information could trigger a regional crisis. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Then came the breakthrough. According to multiple reports that emerged over the years, intelligence services obtained information that dramatically increased confidence in their assessment. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer focused on what the facility might be. The focus shifted to what should be done about it. Military planners began examining options. Every possibility came with consequences. Diplomatic pressure, international inspections, covert operations, military action. None of them guaranteed success, and time was running out. Some officials feared the opportunity to act was closing. If they waited too long, the mission could become impossible. The decision that followed would set one of the most secretive military operations in motion. Pilots began preparing. Intelligence teams gathered every detail they could find. Routes were studied, targets analyzed, contingencies planned. Every possible scenario was considered. Because once the aircraft crossed into Syrian airspace, there would be no turning back. The mission required precision, surprise, and speed. Failure wasn't just embarrassing. Failure could start a war. As September approached, preparations accelerated. The target remained isolated in the desert. Construction continued. The clock continued ticking. Then the order came. September 6th. The mission was underway. Under the cover of darkness, Israeli aircraft departed on one of the most sensitive operations in the country's history. Their objective sounded simple. Reach the target. Destroy it. Leave. Reality would be far more complicated. Syrian air defenses posed a threat. Unexpected complications could emerge at any moment. A single mistake could unravel years of planning. As the aircraft approached their objective, tension inside the cockpits must have been immense. Every mile brought them closer to the point of no return. Then the target appeared. After years of suspicion, months of planning, and countless hours of preparation, the facility was finally within reach. Moments later, the attack began. Precision-guided munitions struck the target. Explosions ripped through the structure. The facility that had generated years of concern was engulfed in fire and debris. Additional strikes followed. The objective was clear: leave nothing behind that could continue the project. Within minutes, it was over. The building that had triggered an international intelligence effort no longer existed. The aircraft turned for home. The mission had succeeded. But what happened next was perhaps even more remarkable than the strike itself. The world expected outrage, military responses, political escalation, retaliation. Instead, silence. Syria's response was surprisingly restrained. Israel remained largely silent. Public statements were limited. Details were scarce. And for years, much of the operation remained hidden from public view. The silence created a mystery of its own. Why wasn't there a larger response? Why didn't the region spiral into immediate conflict? Why did so many people seem determined to avoid discussing what had happened? Part of the answer may lie in the uncomfortable questions the strike created. Acknowledging the operation would force everyone involved to confront a difficult reality. What exactly had been destroyed? How close had the project been to completion? And how had one of the region's most secretive facilities been eliminated so quickly? Those questions lingered long after the smoke cleared. Over time, more information emerged. Reports were published. Details surfaced. Analysts pieced together the story. But Operation Orchard never lost its aura of mystery. Even today, it remains one of the most fascinating military operations of the 21st century. Not because of the bombs, not because of the aircraft, and not because of the technology, but because of what was at stake. A single decision, a single night, and a single target in the middle of the desert. Whether viewed as a necessary preventive strike or a controversial military action, one fact remains impossible to ignore. The course of history can change in a matter of minutes. Sometimes the world's most important events happen in complete darkness, far from cameras, far from headlines, far from public attention. And sometimes, the operation that changes everything is the one nobody wants to admit ever happened. Operation Orchard, the airstrike that officially never happened. Yet its consequences are still being debated nearly 2 decades later. Please drop and like and subscribe, especially if you want to see the next episode.